All right, gentlemen, welcome to the 2021 Digital Hollywood. This is the NFT Power Players panel here at Digital Hollywood. We got a great group of people that are joining us today. I'll start from the top. We'll go ahead and cover a number of different initiatives. We're going to run through this panel. I want to cover a number of things, but I think the best thing to do is start off with the 7 P's of marketing so we can kind of run through the next 45 minutes in a timely fashion. And if you guys understand what the 7 P's of marketing, it's people, place, product, process, physical evidence, price, and promotions. So we'll go ahead and kick off with people. I want to make an introduction to the panelists that we have. We have Zach Katz. He's a partner and CEO for Raised in Space, former president of BMG Music. Zach, how you doing?
Doing very well. Great to be here amongst this amazing group. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Zach. We also have Seth Shapiro. He's a 2-time Emmy winner, professor, and the CEO of Artaku NFT. Seth, how you doing?
Good. Thanks, Travis. Thank you for having me.
Great. We got Mickey Meher, Senior Vice President of Partnerships at Dapper Labs, which is CryptoKitties and NBA Top Shots. Mickey, how you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited for the panel.
The same here. Thank you. And last but not least, we got Bill Tai. He's a venture capitalist and angel investor. He's been a part of some great companies like Zoom, TweetDeck, Twitter, and Dapper Labs. Bill, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Travis. Thanks for having me on the panel.
Thank you, Bill. All right, we're going to just kind of jump in. I'd love one of you guys to kind of kick it off. If you don't mind, Zach, I kind of introduce you first. Tell everybody what you're doing, what you're up to in the NFT space, and we'll take it from there.
So we launched an investment fund a couple of years ago, 2.5 years ago. My partner, Shara Senderoff, and my other partner, Scooter Braun, and I focused on addressing the biggest pain points of the music industry, one of which is obviously new revenue streams. The music industry has been very, very finite in the way it's been exploiting its assets. And COVID, frankly, gave it a nice kick in the rear that it needed. It woke the music industry up to just how limited it's been, and has really pushed the music industry to try new things. And that's exactly what we are in. We invest into and hands-on guide what we believe are the most transformational tech companies that are focused on music innovation. And of course, NFTs, social tokens, music inside of video games, metaverses, and things is in a group that we like to call digital commerce 3.0 are a big focus for us.
Great, thank you. And Seth, how about yourself? Give us a rundown of what you got going on.
Yeah, sure, Travis. Thank you. Yeah, so sort of similar to Zach's story. I've been a digital media guy in Hollywood for around 25 years. I think this is, I don't know, Victor, this might be my 40th Digital Hollywood or something. So thanks for having me. But I got really excited about the eventual opportunities in blockchain for the media business around 15 or 16, and subsequently joined a fully regulated digital currency hedge fund called Alphabet Fund, which was at the time in the UAE. Now it's in the UAE in London. And we started taking a hard look at where the opportunities would be for this existing business for media and entertainment. And over time, the first thing we did was a streaming video platform connected to a blockchain with IBM. And after spending a lot of time in Asia and really immersing myself in Asian fan culture, we really became convinced that digital collectibles would likely be the place that we would break through. And Mickey and his team were already doing great work, obviously, with CryptoKitties. So we started formulating what we thought the sort of fintech requirements would be to do this in the US with major studios in terms of compliance, regulatory scrutiny, and ease of use, all those things. So Artaku is basically, it's a fintech-based platform and creative studio dedicated to great artists, athletes, and brands. And NFTs are obviously at the very center of that. But we do think that over time, there's going to be a new kind of next-generation marketing platform opportunity for this around fan affinity and fan engagement. And so we'll get into that more as the panel goes on, I think.
Great. Thank you, Seth. And Mickey, I'll jump over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're most well known for NBA Top Shot at this point, but we really got into this business to build consumer apps and entertainment apps on emerging technology, emerging blockchain technology. So with CryptoKitties, it was our first test or our first dipping our toe into the water into the space. And we actually invented the NFT and created the NFT ERC 721 standard back in 2017 while creating CryptoKitties. So CryptoKitties was a worldwide phenomenon, but also taught us a lot. And it taught us a lot on how to build consumer apps for the space, and then B, what is needed to build consumer apps in this space. So we went on a journey over the last 33 and a half years of, figuring out how to kind of double down on our success of CryptoKitties and what the next gen blockchain applications were going to look like, but also finding and ultimately building a home or a platform for these experiences to live on. And that's our Flow blockchain. And Flow is really the only blockchain, layer one blockchain that has been built with NFTs and consumer experiences in mind from the ground up. So as we stand today at Dapper Labs, we are a studio which creates worldwide hits in terms of blockchain consumer apps. And then we also operate the blockchain or the platform in which third parties can openly come in and build and be confident in building consumer applications, games, collectible applications on a blockchain that was designed specifically for their use case. So as you look out at where we're going in the future, we're going to continue to double down on our NBA Top Shot success, as well as build out a vibrant, robust third-party developer ecosystem on our Flow blockchain.
Very good. Thank you, Mickey. And Bill, I'll just jump over to you. You're somebody who can spot future technologies from afar. You've had some great success in the past, kind of finding and picking and choosing who are these investment opportunities for you. Tell me, what are you doing in the NFT space? How did you come across CryptoKitties and Dapper Labs? And tell us what's going on in your world, Bill. Thanks.
Yeah, my background's a little bit unusual. I was actually trained to design semiconductor computer chips, and I ended up, coming out to the Valley in the 80s, and I've kind of ridden every technology wave. In the late 90s, I built a small peer-to-peer network to do video distribution. So that led to kind of fascination with what would become peer-to-peer currency. In 2001, I became Alan Greenspan Gollum in Second Life. And Second Life introduced the Linden dollar, which was one of the very first free floating digital currencies in the world in its own economy. And it was through that role that when the Bitcoin white paper came out, I was introduced to that concept, and I lit up my first miner on Thanksgiving weekend in 2010. So almost 11, 12 years ago. 11, I can't count. But anyway, so that was an incredible journey. I ended up funding what became one of the world's largest Bitcoin mining companies, Bitfury. And along the way, started something called the Necker Island Blockchain Summit about 7 years ago. And I just got exposed to a whole bunch of stuff in the space. And when CryptoKitties launched, it was instantaneous. I could see it. I had passed on the funding of Ethereum. And, I just didn't at the time think it was going to work. But once I saw that it had traction and Dapper had come out, to help with the 721 standard, I was like, wow, okay, this could be pretty cool. And I funded Dapper as an angel with one request. And so 4 years ago, I worked with them on the very, very first NFT for Ocean Charity. And I said, I'm going to write a check for CryptoKitties, but I need you to make one digital cat with a ocean theme. And we auctioned that off. I had Sir Richard Branson launch it. And the proceeds went to fund the Sea Shepherd to park their boat in front of the turtle nesting area off of Antigua to protect it for a month. And that's led to this, incredible journey. I am working on that theme now. So along with, working on a bunch of stuff with Dapper on little projects, I am putting together a little marketplace that might sit on top of Dapper if we get the terms right and all that, that is basically a way for charities to launch NFTs in concert with, celebrities and other things to really instantiate causes in something that can be traded on open marketplaces. But that's my more recent project in NFTs.
Great, thank you, Bill. And I'll do a quick intro myself as the moderator. My name is Travis Cloyd. I'm a futurist in residence at Florida International University. I've been in the AR, VR space for the last decade plus. Currently, I'm the CEO of a company called Worldwide XR, where I deal with a lot of historical figures. So I feel like every single day, all I do is explore NFT opportunities for the likes of Jackie Robinson and Lou Gehrig and James Dean and Malcolm X and Rosa Parks and all the historical icons that I represent and work with. And over the years, you know, all the licensing deals we've done, typical movies, scripted series, AR, VR, experiential campaigns, this NFT sector over the last, you know, few months to a year has definitely exploded and opened up an endless amount of opportunities for the clients that I represent. So I'm exploring like everybody else in the space. And so I'm using this panel to figure out what are the options that I have for the clients that I represent, the ultimate path we could take for them to maintain their legacy. And so I want to jump in and just kind of kick it off from the start. You know, we covered people, and now I want to cover place, which essentially to me is platforms. Before we do that, anybody want to kind of give me a quick definition of what NFTs, digital collectibles, are in the marketplace right now? So we can kind of, our audience is going to be experts in the room all the way to beginners looking at trying to jump into this NFT space. Does anybody have a clear, decisive description of NFTs before we kind of get into platform partners and platforms that exist, whether it's blockchain or NFT platforms?
I mean, since we coined the term, maybe I'll take a first stab at it. Now, I didn't coin the term, so maybe I'm not the right person to speak on it. But we've basically reacted to what is a fungible token standard and called it a non-fungible token standard. So a fungible token is something that is directly interchangeable. The properties of it are more or less the same. There is no value in those properties. So you can think of a dollar bill, you can think of a Bitcoin. Those things are interchangeable. They can be traded. They have equal value. A non-fungible token is something that the value lies in the unique properties of that particular item. So there are properties in the token that make it more or less valuable than something else. It could be color, it could be serial number, it could be a number of things, but each token is unique in its own right, and those unique, that uniqueness or those unique properties give it a certain value that is different than another one in that series.
Yeah, it's basically a unique asset, in this case, a digital asset that is captured in terms of ownership on a digital immutable ledger, is essentially the way I would put it, and tying it into the blockchain part.
Yeah, and I agree with all that. And one of the reasons that it's broken through in such a big way as a cultural concept is, to Mickey's point, digital currency has always been about fungibility, because if Mickey lends me $50, he doesn't expect the same $50 bill back. Money is fungible. It's like grain or water or any other commodity. Everyone is as good as the other. And Bill was there a long time before I was, but I remember even when I entered this world, there were a lot of conversations about, since we understood the technical affordances of fungible tokens, what would non-fungible tokens look like and where would they break through? And one place that got really interesting, I think, early was this notion of provenance, which is the idea that a solid practical use case for blockchain is something that the art world has been dealing with for centuries, and other markets as well, which is, if somebody puts a Rembrandt on the market or a Matisse, how do we know that that's the real one? And so major auction houses for centuries have been grappling with this notion of provenance, which is the chain of authenticity. So right out of the bat, that was a really practical use for a blockchain, for a decentralized ledger, that you could record the instantiation, the birth of an object, and then trace its price history and its ownership. So that's one of the reasons I think that it got really hot, because it was a practical use. And also I think because people are spending more and more time living in digital worlds, you know, there's this notion, which kind of makes a lot of sense, which if people are going to spend, 70% of their lives in digital worlds, why would their collectibles, which is a basic psychological need, right? People have collected things from the beginning of time. Why wouldn't their collectibles become digital?
I want to throw out one concept too, based on what you just said, which is that NFTs are basically a vehicle for the economic alignment of interest across a community. And it's kind of that simple, because you've got basically communities that believe a certain thing, a religion, whatever it is. And you can create something that then can expose itself to all of them at the same time. And it lowers the friction to that step, which in a physical world without the digital wrapper and the blockchain and the exposure through a marketplace is kind of cumbersome. And I tried to explain this 5 or 6 years ago to an economist named Hernando de Soto, who wrote the book Mystery of Capital. And if you ever read that book, it was an economics bestseller about what defines the basic building block of capitalism. And in his view, it was clarity of land title, meaning that you could, have a wrapper around your land, you could take it to a bank, and you could borrow money against it to start a store. And if you didn't have clarity, you couldn't get any capital. And so I wanted to take that concept and turn it into a software program. And he didn't understand what blockchain was, but we had a conversation about him buying a rug. And I said, well, Hernando, it's like this. You bought that rug off of Mercado Libre. Before it was listed on Mercado Libre, it was a rug sitting in someone's garage that had zero value. But as soon as you could wrap it in something, take a JPEG picture of it, post it so that the community of interest that wanted that kind of thing could see it, suddenly it was worth thousands of dollars. So there's enormous value creation because you've wrapped it, you can account for it, you can expose it to a community that believes. And that's kind of what it is.
I want to add something to that. I think that's, Bill, I think that's an amazing way of framing it. I think we're all, probably in circles of friends, maybe some of our older friends who don't really understand, why they understand why the original Mona Lisa is the original Mona Lisa and why it's worth what it's worth, but they don't understand why an original digital piece of art could possibly be worth that much. And I always point people to an example that I think somewhat resembles yours, which is, look, at the end of the day, I think we had animals before we even had man. We had fish forever. Fish have had eggs since the beginning of time. A couple of 100 years ago, somebody said, you know what, those fish eggs right there, if we actually serve them in this particular context to this particular customer, they could be called caviar, right? So I think it's taking things, creating new asset classes, right? And then collectively determining that those asset classes have value. That's an example that I like to use.
Very good. Like I said, I'm looking through the eyes of my clientele when we go through this panel, trying to figure out what is the path moving forward. And I look at all the other asset classes that exist for some of these historical icons or any individual out there, right? I'm thinking, what platforms do I go to? I mean, there's Dapper and CryptoKitties, there's, OpenSea, Curio, Ethernity. There's a lot of different platforms out there. A lot of these platforms are starting to create their own little niche, their own community. And from the ecosystem that I have representing clients, we already have all of that community kind of pre-built. How do I approach the open market? How do I approach which platforms I pick and choose for these collectible digital assets to live and breathe? Seth, I want to go to you on that, or Bill, you as well.
I defer to Bill. He's a legend. I'm just happy to be on a panel with him.
So, I look at it as sort of separation by horizontal layer. So, as you would look at sort of like computer systems, you'll look at sort of, the CPU level or what, machine you're going to use. Then there's an operating system, and then there's applications on top. In this world, you basically have a set of blockchains, like the Flow blockchain that Dapper uses, or the Ethereum blockchain that the Beeple thing was done on, or, Tezos has an entry coming through a company called OneOf, and there's a whole bunch of different blockchains that can be used as the accounting layer for the system. And then there's, on top of that, sort of marketplaces of different types. Some are wide open, like OpenSea. Others are more vertical, like NBA Top Shot. And then there's another layer, which is the community of interest that you are serving through whatever type of NFT it is. And all of those three things kind of have to work together. The NBA Top Shot example is a great one because a lot of people know it, but it was a fervent, dense community of interest that could do its best if it had kind of its own community where people could see each other and be part of something and trade like they trade baseball cards or anything else. And then the Flow blockchain, as Mickey described, was custom designed for NFT. So the mapping of that it's very clean. Everything works really well. There's other architectures like Ethereum that are used for, the wide open, all types of everything, like you might see like on OpenSea, which is kind of like the eBay of the world where anything and everything can be on. That marketplace can also scrape items from other things, or just, you know, kind of read off of CryptoKitties, and those will sit there too. There are other marketplaces that are in between, kind of like what Vive 3 or Viv 3 is with running on Flow with Dapper, but it's kind of an artist community that is not as focused as NBA Top Shot. But that's one way to look at it.
Yeah, two dimensions is probably good for people to think about if they're looking for partners are ease of use, and maybe on the other axis you have something like curation. So to Bill's point, OpenSea is a pretty open environment. Anybody can submit. Where, you know, ours will launch in about a month. We're very curated, and there's people in between. So Super Rare is relatively curated, so they're going to be more selective. Nifty, I think, has a pretty long waiting list. The thing that probably is hard for people to get their head around is the distinction between Ethereum-based or sort of native digital currency platforms as opposed to fiat-based platforms, or not necessarily based, but fiat-accepting platforms like ours or like Dapper, where you have the ability to accept credit cards. I think a lot of people, their head gets knocked back where they get excited about NFTs and then they realize that in order to use certain platforms, you're going to have to open an exchange account, buy Ethereum, move it into a wallet like MetaMask, and then establish a connection between that wallet and the exchange. In other words, you can't do it in dollars or yuan or euro. You have to do it in native crypto. So I think that's probably something that, you know, you probably have to gauge your audience. If it's a native crypto audience, that's fine. But if you're a pop culture brand or a studio, you have to really engage in a training process to get people to get their heads around it. And so, you know, that's definitely something to think about.
I want to add something to that. I think Seth brings up an amazing point. And thanks, Bill, for laying out the architecture so succinctly. I mean, the reality is this: if Travis, you're speaking for you're representing a class of iconic legacy artists, right? Most of their fans, and of course, your goal is to introduce them to new fans, and NFTs is a great way to do it. But you have to find the right balance between that young generation of fans and the older fans. The older fans are going to need to be invited to a marketplace that, in my opinion, is absolutely fiat on ramp. The minute they have to, because you're already asking them to try a new behavior. Anytime we're asking somebody to try new behavior and then we're adding additional layers of friction, I think it's a recipe for failure, personally, right? Number one. Number two, I think that it also depends on the needs of the particular client. I think we're seeing a lot of exchanges pop up. Some are better, some are worse by various standards. Some are purely distribution channels. Some are willing to roll up the sleeves and help you with creative and help you with engagement and marketing. It all depends on what resources you have and what you're looking for from a partner. I think the reality is, a lot of people in the music space, and I live in the music space, so I'll speak just from that perspective, have really taken a very short-term look, a very, very reactionary and a very, very opportunistic view on NFTs and digital commerce. You couldn't imagine how many calls we would get a day in the first couple of months. I know this thing is going to go away quickly. How do I monetize? And that, frankly, was translated into artists hastily dropping NFTs that to their fans felt like one-night stands. It felt like a one and done. Nobody was telling stories. And I think at a time, whether we're talking about NFTs, whether we're talking about social tokens, metaverses, any of this new reinvention of commerce, if you don't have a long-term value-driven approach, you're going to frankly take yourself out of the game. I think there's plenty of people at this particular point that we can point to that have dropped NFTs without strategy or real commitment or real creativity that ultimately likely will never drop another NFT. And if they want to, it'll fall flat. Doesn't mean they can't. They can drop NFTs, 20 times a day, but without real strategy and real commitment, it's one of those things that fans really, really feel, right? So I think in your particular case, I think you have clients that have built extraordinary catalogs, extraordinary reputation. And I think if the NFT strategy is not a long-term strategy where every single drop is a chapter in a book, I think people are going to feel that, smell that, and are going to run away.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that was perfectly put. I think is an example to what Zach is saying. We're working with a set of YouTube creators that have many, many billions of views, and I've actually been friends with them for a long time. And I remember years ago asking them, "You guys don't do any endorsement deals or product placement, and why? You must get offered them all the time." And they were like, our fans might kill us if it doesn't feel pitch perfect and right. We've got so much love from fans, they could turn on us in a dime." And we've had a number of conversations exactly to what Zach said, where people wanted to get these drops out quickly and kind of pull in a bunch of cash. And it's like, no, we're not the one for, it's not us, because if your fans feel bilked, or imagine a fan, to Zach's point, who buys a collectible assuming it's going to appreciate in value because the artist is tacitly endorsing the investment to his fans, and then it doesn't. I think there's a lot of splatter. It's not good for the sector, but it's also not good for those artists and those fan bases. So like, as I was saying before, even though it sounds kind of abstract to us, it's about building a new next gen platform for fan engagement. I think, take that really seriously, because that's the history of the entertainment business. When you do that, fans are wonderful. They will reward you. But when they feel like you're trying to rip them off, it usually turns on you.
And back on platforms a little bit, and I appreciate everybody saying that. And from my perspective, I'm always thinking about maintaining the legacy and how to protect the best interests of those icons. If I drop an NFT in the market that has the potential of devaluing the legacy, then that affects a lot of other opportunities that we have. So we can essentially do that. Mickey, with what you have going on, Flow is the blockchain component, Dappers is the company, and then you have these communities and platforms that you've built, NBA Top Shots and CryptoKitties. Tell me what's the success of the platforms? You guys are leading the space right now. Tell us a little bit about your recent success there.
Well, yeah, I mean, Top Shot in itself is by a long shot the biggest blockchain DApp ever, and continues to grow. And we just did a hugely successful pack drop yesterday. Those things, the pack drops, the waiting list, or the queues are continuing to get bigger and longer. We can't even come close to meeting the demand there. So I think many of you have said it, and I think it's the right approach, that the utility or the secondary use cases for NFTs are huge. And with Top Shot and with studio projects, we're focused on increasing the stickiness, increasing the engagement of our user base with use cases. So I think what you're seeing with Top Shot is only scratching the surface of what Top Shot's going to be. Top Shot is going to be a whole lot more than just packs in a marketplace, in a gallery. There's going to be multiple different use cases, multiple different apps, et cetera, in which you can use or leverage your NFTs and give them utility. Top Shot has also brought us a lot of attention from other IP holders across all genres, across all verticals. So I think at some point soon you're gonna see a number of announcements with other IPs, with other big properties that will also want to be jumping into the space, but not jumping into the space as Seth and Zach alluded to as money grabs, but long-term, multi-year commitments and belief in the space. So that's exciting. What else is exciting is NBA Top Shot has done exactly what we've intended it to do. So earlier in the conversation, a couple times we're talking about how do you know where to build, what's the right platform, how do you make your choice? When building Flow, we knew that was going to be a question, and we knew developers and IP holders and brands would be in the dark on what is Flow? How does Flow compare? Is it the right platform for me? Those questions are always asked. And we've seen a lot of blockchains launch with pretty decent technology, pretty decent positioning, but just no adoption, and no adoption because it's a very tough decision to move away from Ethereum. It's a very tough decision as a developer, as a brand, to pick a blockchain. So we wanted to double down in our studio because we wanted to build apps, but we also wanted to showcase what was possible on the Flow blockchain. We wanted to entice and lead the way for the third-party developer community or ecosystem to build on Flow. So we didn't want a dormant blockchain. We wanted to put our money where our mouth is, so to speak. So we wanted to showcase to the world developers what was possible and what Flow was. And it's done that. I have a good close to 1,000 developers now in the pipeline across all verticals, building tools, building properties, building apps, all kinds of different interesting things on the blockchain outside of the Dapper Studio. These are third parties coming into an open ecosystem and building. And what we can offer them besides, hey, this vibrant ecosystem is Dapper Labs has a unit that I'm part of called Developer Experience Team, where we sit with developers, we help them technically, we help them with best practices, we make sure that they're being onboarded correctly into the Flow blockchain, and we want to ensure their success as third parties. So you're starting to see that. We've got dozens of live third-party projects outside of Top Shot. Bill has alluded to some, Vive notably, but you're going to see hundreds, if not thousands, of additional third-party projects popping up here in the next 6 to 12 months.
Very good. And we're rolling through this. So let me kind of jump into the next thing, which is product, right? I think obviously NFTs have gotten a lot of hype in the market. And when we see these drops, some of it's, GIF files, videos, video clips, images, right? What's the evolution of product? Because I come from a VR, AR background. I've always been focused on experiential content, building VR experiences, 6 degrees of freedom type of stuff, 3D objects and images in real time, leveraging AR, more high level experiential content. Where are we at right now with product, the evolution of product, the evolution of NFT experiential content? Anybody want to jump in and tell me where we're at with product? I mean, what's the best product in the market right now?
I think we're seeing just the 1.0 version of it. Sorry, Seth, I'll make this quick because I know it sounds like you wanted to jump in as well.
No, take your time.
Look, I think we're seeing 1.0 right now, and I think that it's going to go to 2.0 and 3.0 very, very quickly. Here's the common denominator. And again, I speak a lot from the music industry perspective and for music fans. Music fans want to be more than fans. They want to more than passively consume. We saw that, in UGC content with the platforms like TikTok, where fans said, you know what, I have some talent. I have something to say. I'm funny. I can sing. I can do all of these things. And I would love to be able to jump in to the ring, so to speak, right? We're seeing it now with fans wanting to be more than fans when it comes to digital commerce, right? Fans want to be able to be part of the economy. Fans want to be able to participate in the secondary market. Fans want to be able to buy things that they value and proudly represent that they have these things, right? Fans want to invest into social tokens because they want to be able to identify Drake before he's Drake, and not only talk about Drake because they found this new artist that they are crazy about, but also on top of that, know that if the value of that particular token connected to that artist who they've discovered grows as they speak about him or her, right, that they're actually going to get an upside that they normally didn't get. So I think directionally, it's giving fans an opportunity to be more than fans. I think to your point earlier, Travis, the technology is there in order for that to happen. When we talk about even with drops, things such as AR, where I can actually buy an NFT that is a version of a digital tennis shoe, and via my phone, be able to see those shoes or those sneakers on my foot, photograph myself wearing those one-of-ones, and then post them to my socials, right? Whether it's Snapchat or TikTok or Instagram, and actually be able to now utilize and boast and flex with what I just bought. I think directionally is absolutely what we're seeing. Then this whole conversation around utility in terms of experiences, whether it's NFTs that allow you to have exclusive access to certain experiences in the physical world, right? Or whether it's a continuation of what the video game world has done so well, which is to invite fans and players to be able to utilize, digital goods inside of these environments, which we're now seeing expanded through non-video game specific metaverses that are now inviting fans to be able to come in and to be able to utilize anything and everything that they've bought is directionally very, very exciting. On top of all of that, when people talk about the metaverse, people are so focused on the digital world. In our view, the metaverse is much more expansive. It's the marriage between the digital world and the physical world, meaning that you know, I can send Mickey an NFT after getting off a call with him. He pulls out his phone, picks it up. It's a Starbucks NFT. He picks it up, and right there off the floor, now it's on his phone. He can walk into Starbucks, right? And he can actually use things in the physical world. I don't know if you love or hate Starbucks, Mickey. I'm sorry if I'm using the wrong.
I'm waiting for it on my phone right now.
Right. So, and then being able to send things to each other that we can ultimately then bring into the digital world. The interoperability is the most exciting part of, in our view, of where all of this is going. And frankly speaking, the interoperability between physical and digital worlds, but on top of that, not having an environment where I have to choose one blockchain, one metaverse, one environment, where I, as a citizen of this incredible new world, can ultimately buy something off of Top Shots and then be able to use it into something else, right? And vice versa. Ultimately, that's where it's going. So it's massive interactivity. It's the marriage of the physical and digital worlds, and ultimately driven by the North Star of dazzling and delighting and adding value. It's nonstop for fans.
Yeah, I'm gonna just jump in quickly. We're already at 2.0, if not 3.0, of smart contract blockchains. All the blockchains, smart contract blockchains that you see popping up now are innovations off of Ethereum from developers that learned from Ethereum, including Flow. I mean, we had a university do some research on Flow, and they called it the 3.0 already of smart contract blockchains. I mean, look, there's innovations off of Ethereum, off the original already. So we're at something 0.0, 2, 3, splitting hairs at this point. But I'll even say this, that there's a thing called Ethereum 2.0. So they even know that they need to catch up and build the next gen of their platform to be able to try to compete with these new blockchains out there.
Yeah, I completely agree with all that. I thought Zach nailed a whole bunch of trends. So instead of piling on that, here's something that occurs to me from a digital Hollywood perspective. So I was really involved in the move to streaming with AT&T and Comcast and others, and launched TiVo when I was at DirecTV, was part of that team. And there's always this question about how big a thing is this really? And so there were many conversations that we had that actually were part of the move from Hollywood right to streaming, which seems to have, worked out pretty well, or at least happened. If you think about the move, and we talked about this even then, why the internet was so transformational, and I was running a game division at Disney and saying this in the 90s, the reason it's so transformational is because as you can make a copy of a copy of a copy, the entire fundamental paradigm in the media business did shift, right? Suddenly, things proliferated. You couldn't have constrained supply. It didn't matter how many movies were in the multiplex necessarily. It didn't matter how many shows were in the linear stream. That's what had defined the media business for a century. And so that obviously was real transformational for reasons we all know, including Netflix's and, probably some of Bill's portfolio companies in Silicon Valley relative to Hollywood. What hasn't gotten digitized at all in the United States yet is money. Because when you can make a copy of a copy of a copy, one form factor or one sector that doesn't work with at all is finance, because you just are in a race to zero. And so the reason that the Bitcoin white paper was so transformational to me in 2008 was you had this methodology that was really strong for constrained supply. So 50,000 foot, if you think about what happens when entire economies and communities become digitized, or you connect communities to new economies, that changes so many things that we haven't even started to see the beginnings of. So if NFT is the tip of that spear, and you think about that transition, and so to your point about, I know you're a VRXR guy, Travis. So one of our advisors, Ted Shilowitz, who's pretty well known, and I'm sure is speaking about this. That's what we talk about. Like, how do we get from here to the worlds that people like you and he are envisioning? And I think we're definitely getting there. This is the beginning of it, and we're in the second pitch of the first inning.
Very good. Yeah, Ted's a good friend. So just sticking with the theme, right? We covered process. You know, Bill, you mentioned physical evidence a little bit earlier ago when you talked about the rug and just the packaging of the rug that had no value, but then obviously had value once it was packaged. And just for time, I wanted to get into just when you carve these deals out. From my perspective, looking at all the contracts that I've received, there's basically three players involved in most of the contracts. There's the rights holder, the NFT artist, and the platform that's a part of each of these deals. And then the pricing, trying to figure out, is it a one of one? Is it a collection with X amount of assets? It's always been, to me, a challenge to figure out how you price those assets. And then we also covered a little bit about promotions. How do you drive adoption with the NFTs, building brand partnerships, building a community? Those are the things we covered. Just given the fact that we only have about 5-10 minutes left, I want to get into predictions because, again, this is the NFT Power Player Conference and panel. So I want to kind of get into predictions. Bill, tell me, you know, just over the next few minutes, where do you envision this space going? How do you envision NFTs progressing in the market this year, the next year, 2 years, 5 years down the road? What do you think?
You know, I'm going to abstract a little bit, so it's going to sound a little academic, but I'm going to make an analogy to the earlier days of pre-internet. And if you think about what kind of networking communications was like before the internet horizontalized everything, you had these vertical communities that communicated, whether it was AOL or Prodigy or CompuServe or these private networks that were set up. And eventually the cost structure of a horizontal application where lots and lots of stuff ran on it, the economies of scale was a lot better. So eventually things like AOL disintegrated to become horizontal and blended into the internet, right? And so what I see today is that you have an explosion of marketplace models, not just in digital. And I look at an Uber, or I look at a DoorDash, or I look at these, or Airbnb. Those to me are NFT engines, but they're proprietary architecture. So I think as we move forward, we're moving into a world where every physical asset will have a digital identity, attach itself to a context-aware cloud, and for its submarket be easily transactable. And if you were to build Uber today, now you couldn't replace the community, but you would just build it as a blockchain application where you basically transfer ownership of the car for 5 minutes. You wouldn't have to have 300 software engineers maintaining AOL for email. You know, so I think we're basically moving into a world where these wrappers around everything in these marketplaces that are collectibles and everything in life, whether it's a piece of inventory in the store, is something that knows where it is in the context of other members of its community, whether they're assets or people.
Very good. Zach, you jump in because you're a music guy. Tell me what do you envision predictions for the NFT space in the music? Is this going to be the future of how you release music videos, music content? What's the path from your perspective?
I don't think that NFTs are the savior to the music industry. I think that the reinvention of asset classes and the expansion of digital commerce is absolutely an amazing bridge to what the future of the music industry is going to be. Guys, this is a really, really interesting time. You know, 20 years ago, artists had very, very limited courses towards success. With time, various parts of the value chain have been put into the hands of creators, music artists and otherwise. Distribution, payment solutions, the ability to be able to understand and amass fans, all of these things. Now NFTs and other new digital channels, right? Social tokens, all the things that we talked about today. There has never been more weapons in the arsenal of a creator than today. The battle is going to be won on creativity in terms of what the product is that you are selling. And it's going to be won on how creatively and entrepreneurially and holistically you're going to be able to use all of these new weapons that have been handed to you. There's no lack of technology. So when we talk about this race, which I think is something that we all follow between content and tech or content and distribution, I think content is really going to prove to be king once again. And I'm in tech, by the way. So this is, I've been in content for 25 years, but you know, today I'm in tech, but I have to acknowledge that without the content, with as how commoditized all of these new tech platforms, marketplace channels and tools are becoming, I think content is going to prove, and creative utility is going to prove to be king again.
Mickey, I'll let you jump in. We're running close to the end of time here, but nobody seems to be more in-depth in daily NFT opportunities than you. You're more of a bottom line guy, obviously, your success in the past. But tell me, predictions from your perspective at Dapper Labs, where are things going?
Yeah, I'm pretty certain that if you're going to look 24 months from now, Ethereum will no longer be the default channel or default platform for NFT projects. I think NFT projects, for the most part, move away from Ethereum to something else, probably sooner than 24 months.
Wow. Very good. Seth, any last words?
Yeah, really quickly, when you think about and you get to know iconic brands, whether they're sports or television shows or movie properties that have been going on for a while, there's usually, and whenever you work with one, you realize just how much story and narrative and cultural storytelling is under the surface. And usually what the public sees is it just scratches the surface of that. So with brands that have endured, like, entertainment brands or sports brands, the stories behind the scenes are actually usually super exciting. So like my friends at Fox Sports, the reason Fox Sports got to be Fox Sports was they got good at unpacking these narratives. I think what's exciting to me, or one of the things, is the ability to get in there with those kind of brands and unpack that storytelling in sort of a new episodic, longer narrative in a new form for global fans. And I'm sure we'll see some really exciting cases of that in the next 18 months.
Very good. Anybody else have any last words they want to jump in and say before we kick it off here at the end of the Digital Hollywood NFT Power Player panel here? Nothing.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you guys. Love everyone's insight. Congratulations to Mickey, Bill, Seth. You guys are awesome. Travis, great to meet you.
Yes, thank you, Travis. And
thank you, guys.
Congratulations, Mickey and Bill.
Thanks. Travis, one thing I would say, because I heard Zach loud and clear, and I agree with Zach about just getting into the space, dropping NFTs, trying to grab some money. We really believe, and we know in our hearts, that this space is just more than the collectible. It's a digital medium. You can bring tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of fans together around an IP in a marketplace, in experiences. You should use the digital nature of it to your advantage. Build games, build social, build things to engage a user base around these digital assets. If you're just dropping digital assets into a blockchain, you're accomplishing 10% of what this is all about. So I would think anyone that listens to this panel, I would encourage them to think beyond the NFT, beyond the collectible. What are the utilities? What are the use cases, digitally and real world? What types of experiences can these unlock in the real world? What type of exclusive asset or access can this give me in the real world? Can I connect more directly with my fan base or user base as the artist or as the IP through these initiatives? Those are the things you should be thinking about, not just selling NFTs.
100%. Very well said. Very well said. Well, thank you for that. Thank you, gentlemen. You're all deserving of your own panel. I wish we had more time. This was pretty fast that we ran through this, but thank you all for being here. Thank you, Digital Hollywood, for having us, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Travis. Thanks, Victor.